Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. The sun is shining. Norwich City in the top six, of course, hoping to cement that place a little bit more this weekend ahead of a big game against an informed side, Bristol City, making the trip to Carrow Road. Looking forward to it. Of course, joined by Connor Southwell for your preview show. We want your comments, questions, score predictions, thoughts, feelings, everything down in the comment section below. And of course, we'll get round to those later in the show. Connor, has been a positive week. Feels like the mood is confident around the camp. All the fans feel like they're in sort of a good mood as well. That's always great to see. Unity that we haven't seen for a long time. Playoff position feels like it's edging closer. How's the week been, and I suppose how big an opportunity is it tomorrow?
Yeah, it's been a good week. Thank you, Adam. Been busy actually, a lot busier than I was expecting with various things that have happened around Norwich City and with Norwich City over the course of the last few days. But yeah, I think every day really that you've had to kind of digest that Preston result, the more significant it feels like it's become. Particularly, if you do. Forgive yourself a little look at the championship table. So yeah, look, they're close. I think if the reality of the matter is, if they win their next two home games, they will more than likely or most probably have secured their top six spot. So that's obviously the positive, and as you say quite rightly, it's another opportunity to do that at home where they've won on the 8 on the bounce. They haven't lost since November. They've been so strong, and particularly given that now we know officially that Norwich City can only finish as high as 5th. The reality is we are looking at hopefully a playoff semi-final first leg at Carrow Road, to keep that home form strong going into those and trying to maintain that, if not winning record, certainly unbeaten record. Then that would be really significant for Norwich City. So yeah, good week it's been, and really looking forward now to tomorrow, as long as the weather clears up a bit.
Yeah, of course, they're boosted as well by the return of Lungi, Jakob Sorensen, of course. He's back in training since the start of the week. We've got John Rowe, obviously, in the sort of fold as well now, came off the bench against Preston, a really big impact. We'll speak a little bit more about him in just a moment. But given kind of the bench sort of dynamic that we spoke about last weekend and the sort of element of youth players that maybe Wagner hasn't yet thrown in very often on sort of the big stage, how big a boost is it to have these kind of players, that are more in the first team fold back in the conversation for Saturday?
Yeah, really, really good. And again, it's timing as well, isn't it? At this stage of the season, with hopefully, as we said, 3 games left, but hopefully another 3 on top of that. Players coming back at the right time, and it adds, I think, to the sense of momentum that's been building in recent weeks. Definitely. I mean, I was thinking to myself, actually, I was in my car driving, and I just thought to myself, wow, Norwich can get promoted this season. Like, that's not an outcome that's ever really entered my head. And to do that, you need squads, particularly when you go deeper into the season, particularly when you head into playoffs. So the fact that they are welcoming back Jakob Sorensen, Christian Fashnacht, obviously after the birth of his daughter, which is fantastic news. Jonathan Rowe as well. These players coming back into the mix is absolutely seismic at this stage of the season. And as you said, there's been lots of debate as to how you get John Rowe back into the team. I'm going to write a column on it for tomorrow a little bit later, but. These are nice issues to have rather than the other ones that perhaps David Wagner has been having in recent weeks about, blimey, who on earth's going to go on the bench? So, yeah, you're right. I think there's lots of elements to unpack with that, but clearly having bodies back and having bodies fresh at this stage of the season with 3 games remaining gives Norwich an opportunity to bed them in, to build up that fitness, and then hopefully by the time there is, and we all hope there is, and we're all crossing our fingers still, a playoff semi-final to engage with, you've got players there who are ready to go, but not just ready to go from a fitness perspective, ready to go, ready to impact games and affect games positively, because as we all know, with how thin the margins are often in playoffs, not always, but often, you need your full squad now to get through them and navigate them. So yeah, it's massively important, and more than anything else, it drives up competition, doesn't it? It drives up competition in key areas, and that John Rowe coming back, I'm sure that will have been noted by Borja Sainz and Gabriel Sara, maybe even on who's on the right, and other players who are in that mix. So players coming back, it gives obviously Norwich more depth, but it gives them hopefully a boost in competitiveness that rubs off on other players in the side.
Yeah, of course, John Rowe, we saw him last weekend. Really big impact, actually, when he came off the bench. 0-0 at that point. But, that ability to drive at defenders and cause mayhem was, such a crucial component in securing that victory. It's be the first time the home crowd would have seen him since that victory over West Brom in January. So it's been a long time for those Carrow Road supporters since they've seen him in the flesh. How big is his return, sort of, I suppose, for the mood as well? Because, we all know the impact that player can have.
Yeah, massive. And you mentioned it there. I mean, it wasn't too long ago we were speaking about kind of Watford and all of the various elements around that. But the fact, I think the Ipswich game felt massively unifying. All of the away games, Preston felt massively unifying. I think we've seen a few of these events, and actually, if you go back to the reverse fixture of this game, that felt like probably the moment it all switched and the moment it all changed in hindsight, and just how big that win was for David Wagner in particular and his future at the football club. Perhaps we'll never know, but it felt defining at the time, and I think in hindsight it feels that way as well. So yeah, I mean they're going to adore him. The moment he comes out to warm up for the first time along the touchline he's going to get quite the reception, and he deserves that as well. And what impressed me was, obviously it's brilliant that he's back, but sometimes you can need weeks or months or whatever to kind of get yourself back up to full speed. He got dropped in at Preston away. First thing he did was stretch a man in behind and put a cross in and win a corner. It's that intent, that enthusiasm, and if you are a tired defender in the Championship, the last thing that you want to face is pace, but also players that can go in either direction. And he can go in either direction. He spins you in and out, and as a defender, it's a really hard prospect coming up against him. So it's as a role, it's not too bad for him to have. But yeah, it's going to be helpful, I think, to everybody. Not that I don't think anyone needs any help with the atmosphere or the mood at the moment, but it just adds an extra layer, doesn't it? Which is much welcome, because there's a player there who has had an absolutely wonderful season. For all of the talk and all of the discourse around young players, he's done extremely well to do what he has done this season in the Championship. And yeah, let's hope he can and we know, because we've seen it, he wants to be Norwich City's top scorer ahead of Josh Sargent. There's that incentive there. Let's hope there's a few more goals and a few more stories to write, because he's a player that has sort of attracted headlines and has written his own stories. So there's no better time to do that than at this stage of the season, and then latterly in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, another special player that's already been mentioned as well in the comment section. Gabriel Sara, of course, got himself in the Championship Team of the Season last Sunday. Obviously also nominated for Goal of the Month for his sort of special finish there against Rotherham. The second goal, of course, the absolute rocket that went in the top corner. Just how brilliant is he, Connor? I mean, the goal last weekend, there's sort of no sort of level of superlatives you can keep saying around that guy. He's such a special player.
Yeah, more goal contributions this season than James Maddison had in that 17-18 season, which earned him, 25 million pound move to Leicester. So that is the bracket of player that we are talking about now in terms of quality, in terms of cost, and in terms of importance to Norwich City as well. It's marvellous what he's done. I think he's 24 goal contributions this season, and that's with a 13-game sort of barren run in the middle of it, which is absolutely staggering, what he's contributed. And it's weird, actually. There was a lot of kind of mystery and wonder as to how he'd do kind of in that wide right position. And actually, I think he's taken to it like a duck to water. I know he played there for a little. He played quite a few games there out wide for Sao Paulo in Brazil, and maybe that's why. But getting him in advanced areas, getting him closer to goal, getting him in areas where he can affect and hurt opposition is I think what a lot of people have wanted to see all season, because there's a player there with sublime quality, and for me now increasingly. And sometimes it feels like there's one moment where you look at a player and think, wow, yeah, he's ready for a step up. I think maybe that's probably been slightly more gradual with Gabriel Sara throughout the season, but I feel like we're watching a Premier League player in the Championship now. And he feels to me like somebody who's going to be a Premier League player with or without Norwich City next season, because of his quality and the amount of teams that have watched him and throughout this year abroad as well. So yeah, it is going to be a case, I'm afraid, of enjoy him while you have him territory. But he is a match winner. He's sublime, and he was the difference for Norwich City last weekend between 1 point and 3 points. And in the context of their season, having players like that is absolutely massive. And particularly when, I'll use the words again, fine margins. When games are on that, you need people who are going to win games, and he does that superbly. He is, rightfully in the team of the season. I think if he wouldn't have had the 13-game run, I think he would be an absolute shoo-in for Norwich's player of the season, and probably an absolute shoo-in, or certainly nomination of the Championship player of the season as well. He's been absolutely superb, outside of obviously those teams who have come down from the Premier League. So yeah, enjoy him. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. Enjoy him hopefully Norwich have him for years to come. But let's enjoy him whilst he's here, certainly in the next few weeks.
Yeah, they probably need him in fine form tomorrow. They face the fourth best defensive side in the division in Bristol City. One defeat in their last 7 games. They've had sort of some really good victories in that run as well. A 5-0 win over Blackburn, victories over Leicester, Plymouth and Swansea. They're a side that's in good form. I know they've got nothing to play for, but as David Wagner kind of alluded to yesterday, they're a side that he feels next season could probably kick on and being in around the top 6 mix, some really good players in that side. The likes of Tommy Conway, Jason Knight. I've been impressed with. Rob Dickey seems to have done well since his move from QPR. Dangerous side, Connor. What have you made of them so far this season? I suppose they kind of had that transition a little bit from Nigel Pearson to Liam Manning.
Yeah, and that's it. I think what he's demanding of them is very different to what they have done. But equally, I'd throw in the FA Cup run that they had and some of the teams that they beat. They beat West Ham away from home, and others as well. And yeah, I think it was always going to be a case of patience, him going in there. But I really like him as a young coach. You look at what he did at MK Dons, more so in the first season than the second one. What he's done, what he did at Oxford in a brief period to get them towards the playoffs in League One, and he is a very good coach, a very good young English coach. Not too dissimilar, I would suggest, from the mould of Russell Martin, albeit they play probably slightly different brands of football, but in terms of sort of profile and career, I think there's a lot of similarities, and outlook probably. There's a lot of similarities between the two. He's one of these sort of progressive coaches that I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that he got the move when he did. Norwich born, of course, as well, although I think before the reverse fixture was at pains to suggest he's definitely not a Norwich fan, even if he did have, I think, a season ticket at one stage at Carrow Road. It's really interesting because he's someone that I think, particularly at Oxford and MK Dons, was associated with possession-heavy football, but you look at the way that he's done it at Bristol City, so in the second half so far of his tenure, they've been a lot more transitional. They've been about soaking up pressure and hitting teams on the break. They did that very well at Portman Road. They were unlucky to lose that game, actually. And they have done in like Leicester's a good example. Even the 1-0 win against Plymouth. And you look actually in the good run that they've had, starting when they beat Swansea last month up to that 1-1 draw with Huddersfield. They've only edged possession once in that time. They're 28% possession against Swansea, and they've sort of not had the most of the ball in any of the games prior to that Huddersfield draw last weekend. So they're a team that, as you mentioned, are going to look to soak up pressure, are going to look to hit Norwich transitionally, and are in good form. And I think there's often a lot of debate about when teams have nothing to play for and how that can be a benefit. But there's a pressure that comes with that as well, because when you ease up, you can try things. There's no pressure on you to go out and play a pass, and almost, there's no fear about making a mistake and the consequences of that. So I think it can be potentially a difficult game. I look at it as, I think there's context around the end of the season with Birmingham that we'd obviously have to take into consideration when that game appears. But certainly, if you look at the form tables and all of those various aspects, you look at this game, I think, as the one that feels like the toughest, and that's very difficult to say in the Championship. But that's kind of what it feels like. And I think Liam Manning has got a side there that, particularly at the moment, feel like they're a lot more geared to what he wants them to do than perhaps they were when he came in. So and I thought they were probably the better team in the game at Ashton Gate as well over the whole piece. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game, and I'm really intrigued to see how they approach it. Like I say, you can get freedom being sort of on the beach, and you can maybe ease up with that as well. So they'll be looking to strike the right balance between the two.
Yeah, I see lots of comments and questions. Keep them coming. We will come round to those in just a moment. But before we do that, Connor, a couple of sort of bits and pieces off the pitch this week. Steve Weaver, departure, of course, overseen a lot of academy development at Norwich City from his role as head of football development. It feels like he was probably someone who, of course, was brought in under sort of the Webber regime, very much aligned to that. Of course, he's obviously decided that he wants to go down a different route, a fresh challenge. What do you make of that one? And I know you've kind of got a little bit of an update maybe on kind of the replacement. I think, fans will be interested in that.
Yeah, I think for me, there probably was a little bit of an inevitability about it. I mean, he's someone that has got very close ties with Stuart Webber. He gave him an opportunity at Wrexham when Stuart Webber was a groundsman, and gave him kind of the first coaching opportunity. They've worked together subsequently at Wolves, Huddersfield, where he was academy manager before coming to Norwich. So it probably always felt inevitable that he would probably leave the club after Stuart did, because they're so closely linked, they're so aligned, they've worked together for so long now, over a 7-year period. It's something that I think probably wasn't a surprise to me. It's something that definitely has been mentioned to me earlier this year, and from what I gather, it's something that he's been considering for a little while now, and not quite sure in the ins and outs of whether there's a notice period or anything like that, but it's certainly been something that he's been mulling over. So if that is the case, and it feels like it's something that's in somebody's head, then it always feels like it eventually reaches one conclusion. And I'm sure, obviously, his relationship with Webber, the alignment that they had, the relationship that they had, that does change when someone else comes in, and you probably feel like you're not probably suited to delivering maybe what they want to deliver. So yeah, I think inevitability in kind of that respect, and equally, again, I wouldn't say that it's anything negative in that sense. I think it's just the sign that there is going to be more change to come. And yeah, you're quite right. I think in terms of sort of replacement, obviously they've really got a little bit of time, because he's agreed to stay on until the end of the season, which I think that ends in a couple of weeks for the 21 side. But obviously for Norwich, hopefully we'll push deep into next month. And all that does really is give Norwich the time to assess their options. From what I gather, that they're not going to rush any appointment. They don't need to be quite frank. And they're going to consider probably what they want from that role, and who they want from that role as well. And that probably feels best suited to taking time, because then, I wrote this in the week. If you're Ben Napper at this moment in time, there are probably 3 roles that you're really looking at in terms of achieving alignment below you, and that's head coach. And we've spoken a lot about that in David Wagner in recent weeks and recent months. It's your academy, your head of the academy, whether that's a head of footballing development or academy manager or whatever. It's that type of role. And then head of recruitment. There are others, of course, as well, but those I think are the primary 3 you'd be looking to initially, in order of where can I make my impact. Because ultimately these are the people who are going to be carrying out your vision. They're the ones who's going to be recruiting to the style of play that you want, coaching the style of play you want, or bringing players through in the way that you want. So this is one pillar of the trio really that I think is so important. And obviously this role has extra gravitas at Norwich because of the importance of bringing players up through the system. So it's so important they get that decision right. It's probably Ben Napper's first real appointment where he can stamp his mark on it and stamp his authority on it, and get someone in who is completely aligned with where he wants to take the football club and the blueprint that he has for that. So yeah, I think there's ways of reflecting on it, and I think looking at it and looking at the debuts, have they achieved their objective? Yes. Is there lots of stuff that we could have a hour-long podcast about that maybe they haven't got right, or things that need further improvement? Absolutely. But considering when Steve Weaver arrived, Stuart Webber was kind of batting away comments about the academy being shut down, for us now to be in a position where regularly we're having conversations about maybe young players not getting enough opportunity at Norwich City, after having sort of 4 or 5 on the bench, sort of shows how well they have done in sort of perception of the academy before we get into anything else. And but yeah, equally I think 7 years is a long time, and sometimes a fresh voice, a fresh approach, a fresh way of doing it is the best way to go, because since John Rowe in 2021, I think it's hard to argue that there's been a young player who has come through and really established themselves at first team level. So yeah, interesting times, and probably signs that there's change afoot at the football club in the long term, I would suggest.
Yeah, staying on the theme of young players, and one that maybe most Norwich fans will hope might be involved next season, I suppose, depending on which division they're in. Abu Kamara, League One champion this week, 21 goal contributions this season for Pompey. What a season he's had, Connor. And understandably, there's a lot of talk and speculation amongst Norwich fans about getting him involved next season, because he feels like probably a player that should be.
Yeah, he does, absolutely, and I think there's maybe a slight difference with Barley Mumba last year compared to Abu Kamara, and that's that there's obviously a sort of club academy element to this. He's someone that's been in the system for a long time, and he's performed at the top of League One. I know that there are loads of other clubs that have watched him throughout this year and been really impressed by him as well. There's going to be demand for him, and we, as we sit here now in a couple of months' time, he's going to be entering the final 12 months of his deal, albeit I think I need to double check, but I'm pretty sure Norwich have an option on that. Yeah, he is a player that, particularly if Norwich City are playing Championship football next season, you would look at and feel could come in and impact the group, particularly from a pre-season perspective. I think from what I gather, that there has been some sort of omissions, as there would be at this point, that he would be quite happy if the situation played out and he had to go back out on loan or even permanently to Portsmouth. I think he would be happy to do that, but of course he's had a wonderful season there, so why wouldn't he? It's up to Norwich now to almost have a plan to try and involve him, and from what we gather and have gathered for a while, he is one that they feel will have a role to play, particularly if they're in the Championship, alongside obviously some of those centre-back options that have been out on loan as well. So yeah, I mean, in terms of loans and in terms of first loans, they don't get much better than what Abu Kamara has done this season, and that's a testament to his character, a testament to his ability, but also huge credit to Portsmouth as well for and John Mousinho for giving him that trust, for giving him that platform. He stuck up for him in October when he was getting a little bit of criticism, and has reaped the rewards of that. And yeah, he's a player that certainly I'm looking at, and I want to see involved for Norwich City next year. So I can imagine that there are a huge amount of supporters out there as well that do. And yeah, clearly a wonderful talent, and fingers crossed we get to see him in pre-season doing what we know he can do on wide and in attacking positions, because clearly you look at his numbers, he is somebody who can create opportunities. And when you look at some of Norwich City's wide options, and there'll be a lot of talk about John Rowe this summer, there'll be talk around others as well. To slot him back into that, I think would be an incredible asset and an incredible bit of depth to drop back into the squad.
Yeah, we'll dip into the comments and questions now. I've seen a few around Adam Idah. Joe asking, Adam Idah playing really well at Celtic. Could you see him doing another loan spell at Celtic or returning to Norwich? And Mr. Bish also asking a similar question. Did the Idah loan include an option for Celtic to buy, or just a straight loan? Well, it's just a straight loan deal, no option there. But kind of with that, do you see him sort of maybe get an opportunity, I suppose, next season? It feels probably a little bit unlikely, and maybe that ship sailed.
Yeah, it does feel that way. I think largely because of what he wants. We know that he pushed so hard to leave Norwich City to go and get game time. And I think if we are in a situation where he's going to come back to Norwich and sit back on the bench behind Josh Sargent, Ashley Barnes, whoever else it may be, I just don't really see that that's feasible. There's a reason both parties agreed to a loan in the first place. And the reality is in January as well, Norwich City were talking to Italian clubs about loans with options to buy within them. So that, I think, gives you an indication of where Norwich are at. I think what this feels like to me is an opportunity for him to go and put himself in the shop window, and also for Norwich to try and drive that price up. And you look at some of the rave reviews that he's getting from Celtic, and I know there's a lot of debate around the quality of the football or whatever, and that's fine, and that's a separate debate in itself. But he's gone up there and scored goals, and I thought those quotes in the week around confidence were really telling. He is somebody who needs that. And I remember speaking to him after the Huddersfield win 4-0 earlier in the season, when there was almost a moment within that game that completely flicked him as a player, from not being involved and being on the periphery to getting across in the box, and he looked transformed thereafter. He feels like he needs that confidence, that love, and maybe that has been provided to him by Brendan Rodgers. He's loving it up there by all accounts at this stage. And look, I think we all didn't expect when Todd Cantwell went out on loan to Bournemouth that he would ever play for Norwich again. He did. So these things can pan out in funny ways. But from how it was left in January, it doesn't necessarily feel like that door is particularly open right now. That's not to say that it won't be in a couple of months' time. And obviously there's a lot of water under the bridge and a lot of stuff to go on and events that happen that might push him up the pecking order in the eyes of David Wagner, in the eyes of anybody else. So yeah, let's see. But at the moment, I would suggest it probably feels unlikely. And that's before we get into the debate about whether he would want to come back. And he may well feel, as he did in January, that he needs to get out and get playing games, because he's 23 years old, and the amount of football that he's had really over his career is that of a 19-year-old, maybe even younger. He's not played a lot of games, and he needs to do that, and he needs to be scoring goals regularly. So yeah, I think it's difficult to foresee that at this moment in time.
Yeah, of course, Adam Idah broke on the scene in the FA Cup. I see Dan Mayhew mentioning that, talking about unity. I'm very annoyed by Wagner's comments and the fact the club supports the FA Cup changes clearly designed to concrete more wealth at the top. I mean, a lot's been spoken around this in the last 24 hours, Connor. Of course, a lot of the sort of sides maybe lower down the pecking order from sort of the National League level up to sort of League One, League Two. Maybe sort of they're going to feel the effects of this, the opportunity to, of course, I suppose get replays, that opportunity of wealth that provides them in terms of TV broadcast, opportunities, etc., gate receipts. We could go on. What did you make of Wagner's comments? I mean, he was sort of more aligning it, I suppose, to what he's used to in Germany. I feel like that's probably his sort of maybe view on it more than the club's view. But what do you make of the whole situation?
Yeah, and I think that distinction you made is really important. That's just his view rather than the one of the club. Yeah, look, I'm quite a measured individual, but this has really wound me up, and it's less so about. It obviously is about replays and all of those elements and the importance of that. And look, we had one in January for Norwich City. Did I want to go to Bristol Rovers on a freezing Arctic? It was minus whatever it was that day. Did I want to go there in a January midweek? No, I didn't. Of course I didn't. But then in that case, Norwich should have won the first game. That's the nature of the FA Cup, and it always has been. And even if we felt as like, obviously we're privileged in the position that we get to go to these games, of course. But there was a general feeling probably of inconvenience around that game generally. But then, as soon as you get to the Memorial Stadium and you see the buzz, you see how packed it is on that night, what it meant to those fans with obviously a trip at Anfield at stake, the money that it generated for that football club, it's so important to our pyramid. And I think any club, and you look, I appreciate some of these clubs in the Premier League haven't been directly impacted, but let's take Brentford as an example, because I know Thomas Frank has been very outspoken on his views on replays. That's a club there who have, for the majority of their existence, played in the lower leagues of English football and have, at some point, benefited from replays and the finance that gives. Exeter City are another example. They had a replay against Manchester United that secured their future for a long period of time. I've seen Lincoln City fans with the cup run that they had that has helped them get to the stage where they're on the cusp of the playoffs in League One. It's so important. And for me, the prospect, any local club, I help out Dereham Town. I know some good people at Dereham Town. If the reality was that they could get to the first round of the FA Cup and they drew a massive, let's say they drew Wigan or pick other examples, Bolton, anyone like that, and they did well enough to get a replay. They went away and they got a replay, but they weren't, to not get the opportunity to take that back to their ground with the revenue that would come, with the interest that would come, is really shocking for me, particularly when you look at Cray Valley Paper Mills, who forced Charlton to a replay. That's the difference for them between turning the lights on and off, particularly in society at this moment in time. But then we've got probably 6 or 20 teams in the Premier League that don't like it. So that's the way that it goes. It's shocking for me, and that's one issue. And there's the competitive element to it and the replay element to it. But for me, there's a governance issue here as well, and the way that it's been manufactured, and the idea that the Premier League and the clubs within it can just go to the FA, can go to an organisation and say, we don't like this. How much is it going to cost us? How much is it going to cost us for you to change the rules, for you to implement changes that we want? That for me is really shocking, particularly when you consider the amount of games. So Peterborough United this year, I think, have played in excess of 50 games. They've got some players, Ronnie Edwards, Harrison Burrows, who have played 50 plus games this season. And they haven't moaned about it, and they've got on with it. So yeah, look, I think there is a very valid argument to have around replays, but I don't think you can be making them if 2 days after the season ends, as Tottenham are, as Newcastle are, you're flying out to Australia to play postseason friendlies. So this for me is less about what the games are. It's more about the value of the games, and these are seen by Premier League teams as not having value, and that is really disappointing because, as I said, you've got a competition that's the oldest in the world, that is privileged. That we're all privileged, and that every team enters kind of as equal, and all of these aspects that is essentially being ruined because of 20 clubs in the top flight, or at least the body that is representing them. So look, David Wagner's entitled to his view. I can completely understand why, as a coach, he would take that view. I have a different one, and I'm sure other people have a different one to mine, and vice versa. And that's the nature of it. But for me, what really stinks around this is the way that it's happened, and that is really disappointing to me as somebody who likes, who loves the sport of football, but increasingly doesn't like the game and all of everything that comes with it. So I hope inside Carrow Road, inside Colney, there is feelings of frustration around this, and there are opposition to this, particularly given the way that Norwich City like to operate, the fact that they have made such an example of swimming against the tide, of being different to the Premier League sides. I really hope that is now the opinion, that this cannot happen, and that we see actually Championship clubs make a stand, because it is the case that this cannot be a battle that's just left to League Two, to League One, to national league teams to fight. Actually, we need some Championship teams to step up and take it on as well. And I would absolutely love to see Norwich City be one of those teams, because I think this is so important, and it's less, okay, there's a very important issue with the FA Cup here, which is obviously important. But for me, it's what comes next, because if you allow the Premier League to make changes in this way, then it won't be long. Believe you me, it will not be long before we see Community Shield games taken to America, before we see Premier League games taken to America. And for a team that wants and is aspiring to be in the Premier League, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want Norwich City to be a part of that. So yeah, look, it's wrong for me, and I hope that everyone comes to their senses and reverses the decision, because it's about so much more this than just 20 clubs in the Premier League. And the final point I would say is the FA, who are supposed to be the protectors of the modern game, if you've got all of these clubs issuing statements in the very in the way that they are, and I think Dan's made a good point actually about the 59ers who had replays to get through their competition as well. That's absolutely bang on. But if you're the FA and you are continuing amongst loads and loads and loads of statements, and you can go and read them on pretty much every League One and League Two team's website about these changes, if you're ignoring those in favour of the 20, then you can't claim to be an FA that is for all, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, even I've got good memories of replays. The Jamal Lewis header, of course, at Stamford Bridge quite recently as well. And I think, of course, it's going to divide opinion. William saying, I don't like replays personally, but I get the reasons behind binning them is wrong. I think that's probably the case on it. It's going to be a bit split depending on what views you've got. A few more quick comments. Jack Norwich on YouTube. Is Wagner unsackable after this run, even if it finishes it in the playoffs? I think we've had this conversation quite often, Connor. It feels like probably one that's maybe going to have to be parked until the summer.
Yeah, let's have it in the summer properly. Let's have it in the summer.
There we go. Jeffman feeling semi-confident here. He's got the Wembley Premier Inn booked, although I made sure to secure the refundable option, so not too confident. Yeah, we'll see what we get on that front. Joe saying, do you think a win tomorrow we can secure the playoffs? I mean, 74 points would be pretty close, Connor. I'd say maybe, to feel a little bit more confident, 2 wins probably secures it, but...
Yeah, I don't think it would. Bear with me because I did do the maths on this last week, and I'm not very good with maths, so I'd rather read it than have to work it all out again. I used the calculator, but I think it would take them pretty close, if not just about there. Bear with me 2 seconds while I try and find this. Yeah, here we go. So this is the list that I have. Obviously, as we said, Norwich City cannot finish on more than 80 points now, so they can get 9 points from 3 games. Obviously. Southampton are currently 4th, I think, with 84, so they can't finish higher than 5th as it stands. So it is going to be a home, providing they do get in, it will be a home first leg and an away second leg. It's just about whether they can finish 5th. So the maximum points available as it stands: West Brom on 81, Norwich on 80, Hull on 77, Coventry on 75. This is obviously the maximum points available for those sides. Middlesbrough on 72 and Preston on 75. So by virtue of Coventry not playing this weekend and having a couple of games in hand, it couldn't be done anyway. But even Hull losing, I don't know where are Hull this weekend. I don't know. You might be
away at Watford. Yeah.
So even if they lost that game, there's still a possibility that they would be able to do it on goal difference. So mathematically, there's no chance of it being done this weekend. I think if obviously they lose, and Cov have got a game on Tuesday night, haven't they? So it may even, is that against Hull? No, it is, isn't it?
Yes.
So there is a possibility where Hull lose tomorrow, then they lose, or them and Coventry draw, and it is then mathematically, I think, pretty much maybe not quite done on Tuesday night, because Coventry would be down to 74, so maybe not quite, but there is a possibility that it could be all but done then. So probably one that we're looking at more next week. In order to secure, but Norwich City need to win that game tomorrow, I think, to make absolutely certain of that. So that is where the priority has to go.
Yeah, before I suppose to get your score prediction and maybe the thoughts and feelings on the game, just want to talk a little bit about the atmosphere. That was something that David Wagner alluded to yesterday. Just going to quickly play that clip now, and then we'll just talk about that before we venture more into the game.
Yeah, I hope for it, for sure. And to be fair, I think there will be more or less the same people in the stadium, I guess. So it makes no sense that they show the atmosphere because of the opponent. You have to show the atmosphere, or you should show the atmosphere because of your team which you support, and because of the stage of the season where we play for something where everyone should really be on it and exciting, like we all together are. And this is my hope, and hopefully this will be then the case on Saturday, and hopefully we all together can get a result on Saturday which satisfies us.
Yeah, of course. It was a couple of weeks back, that last home game against Ipswich. Such a special atmosphere. Probably one of the best in sort of recent memory for me, up there, sort of along the lines of the Man City win, maybe in the playoff final win over Ipswich. The noise that was generated that day. Do you get David Wagner's point there, Connor, about sort of that being replicated irrespective of the opponent? It feels like, given kind of the good mood around the place at the moment and how close they could maybe go to securing playoffs, it should be a good atmosphere tomorrow. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, let's be honest about it, him and his players deserve that for what they've done in recent weeks. They deserve that support. And, I say what I always say to fans, which is almost, don't let the atmosphere be used as something that is kind of used to beat you with afterwards. That, we might have got over the line if the fans are a bit louder. Don't let that be the case. Norwich fans are always brilliant. They always, travel in numbers. They're always at Carrow Road in numbers. And like you say there, hopefully, I mean, the sun's just appeared, so hopefully that's a nice omen for tomorrow. But hopefully the weather's good, the football's good, and those fans are in good voice as well. Because, as we said, I think we're all beginning slowly to turn one eye to the playoffs. That Ipswich atmosphere is one that's going to need to be replicated in that home leg to give Norwich every ounce of success and every chance of success as well. So yeah, that should be the goal. Use these 2 games as almost a warm up for that, we hope, and let's see what happens on the pitch between them. But yeah, like you say, I think by and large, I know there's been some issues, but I think Carrow Road has been pretty fair with the Norwich team this year. And when they haven't done well, they've told them they've not done well, and when they do well and they have done well, they've been very supportive of them. Obviously, probably the peak of that being against Ipswich. So yeah, David's right, and let's hope the fans do bring that noise tomorrow.
Let's hope so. Rob saying, if we do still playoffs, I'd rather get Ipswich in a 2-legged semi than Leeds and Leicester. I think we'll worry about that one in a few weeks' time when we know who we're playing. I don't think I can bear the thought of it at the moment. I think it's got to that point in the show. Score prediction time. Ollie coming in quickly here with a 3-0 Norwich win. And obviously referencing it is the anniversary of the last time Ipswich beat Norwich today. So yeah, 15 years is officially there. With that, Connor, Bristol City, as I mentioned, very good defensively, maybe struggle a little bit going forwards in terms of the goals. I think they've only had one victory over Norwich in the last 14 meetings. That was at Ashton Gate last season. Not one at Carrow Road since 2009. So all these statistics would lend itself to a Norwich City win tomorrow, surely?
Yeah, 15 years over them as well then. That's nice to know. Yeah, this will be tight, I think, as they always are at this stage of the season. Bristol City in good form, Norwich in good form. I've got Norwich to edge it, 2-1 for me.
Yeah, Peter going for a 3-1 or a 3-0. Norwich feeling very confident there. I think it's going to be a tight and cagey affair as well, given kind of the 2 elements there that I spoke about. Bristol maybe not being overly potent going forwards, but defensively very good. But I think Norwich have got that individual quality that, like they did against Preston last weekend, to probably find the magic moment that they require. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 Norwich win, which of course would secure 3 points, and that would be a huge boost moving into, of course, the final couple of games of the season. Dan Mayhew, please no Derby playoff. Type 1 the victory. He's going along the same lines as me. Simon going for 2 wins from the last 2 home games, and we're in the playoffs. Yep, that would be pretty much all but secure. So looking forward to it. Should be a good game tomorrow. Of course, lots of great content across our channels at the moment. You've got David Wagner's full press conference from yesterday. You can head over there and get all the latest updates from him. I spoke to a Bristol City fan, so you can hear all the insight on Ashton Gate and kind of their upturn in recent form. Sam's got Tactics Board up as well, which is probably well worth going and have a look at, a little bit more of a tactical breakdown of this game and maybe where it could be won and lost. Of course, lots of good content on the Pink and Plus app as well, $2.99 a month. You can take out a free trial as well. You've got Chris Sutton, Ewan Roberts, lots of other great columnists, lots of good content on there that's well worth checking out. And before we sign off, I'm just going to quickly mention that the Football Manager competition that we've got running as well, of course, at the moment. We are now on Football Manager 2024, which of course is great for us personally, but we've also got a free copy to give away. So if you're someone that enjoys Football Manager, here's how you can win. We've got a really difficult question, actually. It's what colour card does a player receive when they get sent off? And if you know the answer to that, then send the answer to ec.competitions@localiq.co.uk with the subject line Pink and Football Manager. Of course, you can go back and see that again if you didn't quite catch it all, and that will also, of course, be a live, for you to be able to email there and get a chance of winning that good competition, which we think is a good one that anyone that wants to be the next David Wagner would enjoy. So with that, we're going to sign off. Looking forward to the game tomorrow. It'd be interesting to see what team news we get at 2 p.m. Of course, you can join me and Connor live from Carrow Road tomorrow with all that and all the live coverage. Of course, hopefully it'll be another 3 points for the Canaries.